Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. On this episode, we're going to be talking about mapping out your customer journey and obviously going through some key pain points throughout that and relating that back to digital marketing. And I have Mike Hall, who will be our guest on the podcast today. But before I do that, as always, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe if you are listening to our podcast audio on any streaming platform. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to click on the subscribe and bell notification button. And again, as always, I always wave to YouTube. Hi, YouTube. So let me introduce Mike Hall, founder, director, or co-founder, director of ThinkSMART.
Hi, Manni. Nice to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, appreciate it. Those watching on YouTube realize that the really nice canvases behind Mike were actually done by Mike in our branding materials. So if you're streaming, get onto the YouTube platform and have a quick look at the first minute of this podcast. You'll see what I'm talking about. But Mike, painting isn't all you do. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So, no, painting isn't all I do, although I do enjoy it. It's something that I picked up back at college years and years ago. So I'm founder of ThinkSMART Marketing, and what we really specialise in is helping businesses look at their marketing strategy. And one area where we can support them is around the customer journey. And we've been doing this for about the past 7 years. Prior to that, I worked for someone else for 30 years. And we had the opportunity to set the new business up. So it's all been an interesting ride for the last 7 years.
Fantastic. One of your colleagues and guests, Gary, was on a previous podcast. So if anyone has been listening to the journey all the way through, so Mike and Gary obviously work closely together. So it's good to have this opinion on it because that was very strategy led, and this is more focusing on mapping out a customer journey. So we're going to talk about the benefits of mapping out a customer journey. We're going to be talking about I've got 10 here key pain points that you might, as a business owner or a team, come up with, and how that's going to relate to marketing. And what we're going to do throughout this podcast is going to go through each one of them, expand on them in a bit more detail. Also, Mike highlighted that there's a downloadable guide. Yeah,
so what we've realised is actually, certainly when it comes to touchpoints, there's some really key ones that you can have in place. Yeah. So we've actually got a download where you can download the document from our site, and that'll give you help you kind of rate yourself as to where you are and give you some hints and tips as what you should have in place.
Yeah, self-evaluation when you're running a business or if you're a team leader is probably one of the most important things you can do. What we will do is everyone who's listening or watching YouTube will add that link onto our YouTube channel description so you'll be able to get it there. Right, so let's get straight to it. So benefits of mapping out customer journey. You've actually come up with the 10 key pain points, and we're just going to elaborate on each one of them. The first one is improving customer satisfaction and loyalty, a lot of missing opportunities. So explain that one a bit more.
So when we work with businesses, everyone's really going after the new customer. But what is sometimes the missing, or the obvious thing, is actually how are you talking to your customer? And as part of mapping out these different touch points, it's understanding where you could do things better and what are the missing opportunities. So it's too easy to go for all the new things, but actually, what could you be missing by engaging with your customer on a regular basis? But more importantly, how often are you doing it?
I always say this I've said this on a couple of times on previous podcasts, is that in difficult economic markets, people try to focus on new customers, but forget their existing customers.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it's almost thinking about, how do you want to be treated yourself? How would you want to be treated as a customer? And actually having those regular interactions, whatever they might be. And let's face it, one size doesn't fit everybody. It's about knowing your customer and knowing where you can engage with them more. Yeah.
There's so many opportunities with existing customers, whether that's like, customer loyalty, retention, getting more value. If you're in e-commerce, getting more value out of them. From a marketing perspective, I would say you always use your existing customer data profile to target new customers because they're the customers that buy from you, use you, or use your services if you're B2B, or buy your products if you're consumer focused. So it's always a great place to start with. And it's always your existing customers that shout about your brand.
Yeah, they're the ones who they're big advocates. It's like on your own sales force, isn't it? They're the ones who go out and just bang the drum for you. But it's also thinking around, do they know everything that you do?
Yeah.
And this might lead on to one or two of the other points, but, so many times we've said to clients, do they really know everything that you do? Well, perhaps they don't. So it's these cross-sell and upsell opportunities where the worst thing you can ever hear from a client is, "Oh, I didn't know you did that."
Yeah.
And that's really bad. Everyone should really know what it is that you do. And we've seen, over the past few years, how things have changed. So your products and services change all the time. But unless you've got a plan to go and tell your customers what you're doing, how do they know?
And from a marketing perspective, anyone's listening, he's like, well, how do we, if you're, let's say you're listening to this and you're a large company that offers, multiple different services, and you might have a cash cow of a key services and you want to upsell, you've got to market to existing, because just because you've brought a customer on board doesn't mean the marketing stops, doesn't mean your branding, how you position yourself as a company to that customer stops. It's the simple things as newsletters. For us, we know our clients, and any client listening, listens to our podcast, or they attend our bite-sized networking events, and they learn from that. They will read our blog posts. We will host specific events, and they'll watch it, and they'll always come up to me, "Oh, I saw that you were doing this. We saw that you're doing that," because we're connected with them on LinkedIn. We communicate with them. We're always sharing updates. We're inviting them along to key events as well. So that's one way how you can improve customer satisfaction and loyalty.
And I think, one thing you touched on then is these regular communications. But another thing we noticed, so if you do take the time to map out the journey, is actually you spot the different touch points that you're working with. And then it's about consistency. Not just consistency of message, consistency of brand across all those different touch points. But once you identify them, you can actually review them and go, oh, right, okay, we're doing all these things, but maybe is the messaging right on all of them? Is it consistent? So you've got great opportunities then to start to dig down and start to get this consistent message right.
The next couple of points on this journey is identifying pain points, areas to improve, and obviously understanding customer needs and preferences. I think they're kind of interlinked, because you need to understand what your customer needs and preferences are. Understanding your customer, whether it's understanding your customer in terms of who it is, in terms of who you're trying to target as a business, in terms of a user, service user, or just from a marketing perspective. I've always said it, know your audience. Even if you go back to my episode about 3 pillars of social media, understanding your audience and strategy is everything.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that's interesting is actually, we often advocate with clients, as part of their mapping out the touch points, is putting in reviews. But then actually at these reviews, going to your customer, right, tell me, how can we make you better? What can we do to make, your service or improvement? What can we do to help you? And it's understanding what then additional things that you could add into your customer journey to make their life easier. And it is identifying all those pains and problems that they have and thinking, actually, well, where do you want to be in 6 months' time? Where do you want to be in 12 months' time?
So take a customer, for example, how, other than just sending them a simple form to complete, I always believe that has to be a personal element, specifically if you're B2B and you have, key client relationships. So just quickly, what's the best strategy? What's the best approach to get that, to understand your customers' pain points, to get that, understand their needs and get that feedback?
A lot of things that we do is kind of getting in front of the customer and then starting to dig deep and ask some of those awkward questions to really understand what they're trying to achieve is the biggest thing. And I think by doing that, you can uncover things. And one of the biggest things we find is actually having a fresh pair of eyes on something is the thing that really makes them open up. Even you going down through a marketing SWOT to understand their real challenges about what they're doing. But a fresh pair of eyes on something and just asking those questions where they go, oh yeah, I not really thought of that. Or I don't, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I spoke at an event recently, and a lot of this was around, as business owners, we know our business is inside and out pretty much. But then when it comes to doing the external things, we do need that extra bit of guidance. We don't know everything. So you wouldn't necessarily try and fix your car yourself. You wouldn't necessarily go and try and do your own teeth at the dentist. But it's the same principle. So why shouldn't you just get that advice on the marketing side and all these things? That's where digging deep, asking the right questions face to face can really open up.
Yeah, if you're working with an agency, you need to really be looking at how often do you sit down face to face, or even virtually. I get it, we're in a very virtual, video focused world, with our clients, depending on actually the level of client in terms of how much value it is to the agency, in terms obviously from a revenue perspective, we do either weekly, bi-weekly or monthly calls with that client. And then every quarter we recommend a face-to-face. So every 6 months we recommend a face-to-face, because that's the amount of time. And then it's that point where we do obviously, well, here's how the last 6 months are going. But then it's also like, well, what's new? What are you investing into the business? Why are you doing this? Why? Well, we've got these issues. What else are you doing around the website? So we'll talk about other things and other elements. I always find that is the biggest pain point for clients, specifically e-commerce, is they just want to see the revenue.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think that's some of the challenges. And I think, well, we do know from experience that, taking the time out to map out the journey and do things like that, it's not something you can really put an ROI on straight away. But we helped a client get an extra 10% on their retention levels. They went from like 85 to 95%, but it was down to a sum of the parts of, putting structures in place and processes, but then implementing these, and it all helps, to grow everything.
And that brings us on to the fifth point, which is obviously optimizing your marketing and sales effort. So when I was talking about, e-commerce and they always want revenue. We have this with a particular client right now where it's just new client, introduced them, started driving some good sales. And we were looking at the add to basket value for the spend. I think we're spending around about probably that low level of like Google spend around about £1,500 to £2,000 a month. So it's not a lot. But the add to basket value is anything from like 15,000 to 20,000, but the conversion value is only around about 6. And I think it's been a bit less this month. But then it's like, well, it's not working. I was like, well, no, it is working. You're just not looking at the data and understanding your customer journey. So in that situation, the ads are working, because if we look at to add to basket value in terms of customers that have clicked through from a Google ad or a Facebook ad and actually gone on and added a product to basket, the potential value of that is anywhere between 15, 20 grand a month. If your website's only converting 6 grand or 5 grand of that potential, so only converting at 20, 25%, then A, you need to look at pricing. B, you need to look at, well, why they're dropping off. Is it a discount? Is it value? Is it shipping? Is it, could be a multiplicity of things. Is it the process? Are they finding a better product elsewhere online, cheaper, etc.? Is it that they're just shopping and are wanting to see the potential cost as the way up? So you need to obviously make sure you're communicating them through email, retargeting, which obviously we do. So they forget that you need to really optimize your marketing and sales efforts.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, again, mapping that process out so you've got it out of your head and down to something that's documented so you can see how it all kind of works. That's when you can find the missing opportunities. And as you say, we've worked with clients before where, they haven't even done, the add to basket or, they don't even know it. And another thing we came across recently was actually a client said to us, we got loads of great ideas, but we know we're not doing it right. But actually mapping it out, you can then work out where you can automate. So bringing in like the email abandonment, all those kind of automated emails. And I'm still a great believer that some business owners don't do things, not because they don't want to do it, they're just not sure how. And actually they need to get these processes done and out of their heads and map out what they ideally want. And then they can look to go, right, okay, well, we can automate this bit, or we need to speak to a specialist on how to do all these kind of things. But it's getting it out of their heads so they know what's happening. That's the key thing for me, because there's a lot of assumptions that go on as well. So we've worked with clients where they're assuming a process is right. So I'll give you an example. We worked with a customer and they've gone, we get the owners in the room and we talk to them and they say, oh, right, okay, so we do this, then we send a welcome pack out to a new onboarding customer. Then they'll go, no, we stopped that 6 months ago. And these are typical of the kind of things that we hear where there's an assumption that things are happening. So again, another great reason for getting this thing out of your head and map the whole process out is so you've got a consistent approach and things are happening when you expect them to happen.
That leads into actually tailoring your products and services to specific, meeting customer needs, essentially. So you need to obviously optimize marketing and sales efforts by understanding your customers and their journey, specifically on your website or through your business, because some customers might take months to onboard, some customers are instant, depending on the type of product service that you offer. Then you've got to make sure that you're tailoring key messages, their products and services to those customers so that they hit those needs and pain points that actually I'm struggling with getting insurance for my business, or, you talked about the dentist one, is that my teeth hurt, so go get them checked out.
Yeah. But there's, when it comes to that, and especially now with the way you can segment data, I mean, let's face it, your data's the gold dust. And, you've got one product, but the pain point for one customer is completely different from the pain point from the other. So it's making sure you've got the right processes in place to identify those, and then the right journey for those to go down, so that you're talking to them. It's all about being relevant to the customer. If you think about some of the favorite brands that we all buy from, they're very clever at how they make it personal to you. And, we've never had probably a better opportunity to do that now with what's available tech-wise. When you look back to when I started back 35 years ago, this would have been pipe dreams, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be able to do it. But now you've got so much available that you can do all this stuff. So you need to take advantage of it. But it still comes down to me. The fundamental thing is, what are you trying to achieve, and how can you map that out to make it work best for you and your customer?
And we can track so much more as well, compared to years ago, where identifying that insight and data was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Even when I started out, it was still top line KPIs, impressions and clicks were like, oh, look how many impressions we achieved, look how many clicks you achieved. And then
I think there's other things you can measure. I was chatting to a client the other day about, they were not necessarily following up on all the quotes. So we said, well, okay, we've mapped out the process, and sort of said, look, put a checklist in for your guys to make sure that this is, they're actually following up when they should do. Yeah. So they're now going to physically be checking that and recording that as a score, so that every month they can go into a meeting and go, right, okay, why have we not followed up so many leads? Yeah. So we should be able to see an improvement on that. And if not, why not? And it's not a case of saying, well, pointing the finger and say, why have you not done it? But it's actually, how can we help you achieve that? Yeah. So it's turning it round. So
because clearly you're doing something else where you're forgetting to follow up on that.
Yeah,
quote.
And it might be a genuine reason, but unless you tell us, we don't know. So how can we help you? So rather than back in the old days, you probably got told off for not doing it. And now it's flip it 180 degrees and go, right, how can we help you, make you achieve this, to make it work for you?
Most of the times it's processes.
Yeah.
I always find, even with us, there was like, as bad as it sounds, we had a handful of pitches that we didn't really follow up with. We've done it, and we got busy with other elements for the projects, and it's been 2 weeks since you kind of followed up, and it's like, well, that's a bit too long to kind of follow up on some specific elements. So and our new BDs come in, it's like, no, you've got to have better processes in here. You should be following up after X amount of days, and then setting up processes and checkpoints, etc., and just improving that process. And before you know, we've got more. And then even the data we had from our showcase events is maximizing that and following up with. And since he's come in, he's just re-engaged so many new customers because of just improving that process. Because like I said, it's like getting that external view and mapping it out and understanding, well, where are you on that specific journey? And,
I think the other thing as well is that it brings in consistency, and that's key. It's been I've worked previously when we've set up, I implemented 27,001 years ago, which is all about putting your process in. But people can be very this is mine. This is my bit of the process. I'm not going to tell anyone else how to do it, because if I do, then they might get rid of me. Yeah. But actually what you're trying to do is build something that's consistent, that goes through. So actually it doesn't matter. And you go to McDonald's, like it or love it or loathe it, you go there, the service you're going to get, what's going to happen, but it's consistent. And your customers should get that same experience, so that they know exactly where they are at what point in time, and you're treating them in the right way. So that actually they'll come back to you for more, because that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to build that consistency, loyalty, retention piece.
And it's like you just said then, it's like you then, you give the example of the quote, it tells you, as we get to the next point, the prioritizing the areas of investment in that customer experience element. So we knew we had to invest in a better BD that could develop and build these processes and help us identify the stuff that we didn't even know we were missing out on.
And that's it. That's the fresh pair of eyes. That's someone coming into your business going, hang on a minute, have you thought about that? And you go, oh yeah. So the thing is, it's when you tell them, it's so obvious. Yeah. But because everyone gets stuck in doing the day-to-day and everything's running as it should do, they don't see the things. And it is taking that time to take a step back. It's worth so much. Is that taking a bit of a breather to go, oh, right, okay, how can we do this better? And also asking the wider team on things. I've done this before where we wanted ideas, and the most unlikely people have come up with a suggestion, and you think, yeah, brilliant.
It sounds so simple as well.
It's ridiculous. It's so simple, and it's giving people a voice as well, I think, as part of the whole process, which ties into kind of like you do this for your team as well. It's giving them the voice.
Yeah, you need to do the same thing with the team internally. And we have probably talked about a bit recently over the last probably like 2-3 minutes of this podcast about the internal team and processes. But it's just as important to document everything. Yeah. And you highlight that here as one of your key points is the importance of documenting a process, because it's like you said, if someone's in like oversees a certain part of a process or project, then, you know, we want to make sure that's documented so that we know, well, where does that element fit, you know, et cetera. Like, so it's so you know what has worked and what hasn't worked. So when you go back to that document process, like, well, what did we start with? We started with X, Y, Z. All right, we've implemented these things. This worked, this worked, this worked, this didn't work. Okay, so we need to revisit that element of the whole process. We did,
do you mean an example? We did a piece of work for a large college. We looked at mapping out their student journey and also how they interacted with the businesses around them. And when we did it, we got all those sort of heads of faculty and various things, people together. And this was the first time they'd been in a room together as a team, which was really, you know, really bizarre. But actually what we did, because we do it in such a very visual way, they could actually see where other people fitted. And they knew that if they didn't do their bit, then the next department couldn't do theirs and so on. So it has a wider impact as well, because people can see, like you alluded to before, where they fit. And not working in just isolation to get a project done. They need to know that if they don't do their bit, it has a knock-on effect and so on.
I'd be surprised how many times I go into a company and we're talking from a marketing element and we're like, well, what's the sales team process? Because if you're driving leads for, let's say, B2B company, then you want to know, well, how is that lead being managed? Because, okay, ultimately, from a digital marketing perspective, we can drive those leads, but is it the right quality? Are we hitting the right pain points in terms of the USPs that we're communicating in the core message and descriptions to said audience? Is it the right audience, etc.? What can we do to make the sales team's journey easier? And what we find is that the sales team is so disconnected from the marketing team. It's like they've never really sat down other than to say, yeah, these leads were good, these leads were bad. Well, why were they good? Why were the other ones bad? What could we use from the bad ones, and, you know, to take some learnings from it if possible in terms of what not to do, but also if these were good, why were these good? You know,
and also asking the team, what can we do to support you?
Yeah.
You know, we've done various, you know, I've worked for the likes of O2 before now, and we've done various things to help with sales toolkits and so on to actually are aimed at the sales guy. So they've got objection handlers and various other things, but understanding what they want. That forms part of your customer journey. Yeah. You know, once this, you've almost got to map the process out. So when the lead comes in, what happens next? Oh, it goes here, then what? Then what?
Goes into a CRM system, you know, what we found gets assigned to a salesperson. That salesperson's job is then to get that call booked in with that person, or validate the data in terms of the email contact information that's all being referred, etc. You know, and it's just so many things that got to go on.
Yeah, but what we find is people drop off, they drop out, but everyone should go somewhere. In my opinion, you know, whether you're then, because let's face it, most people when they're certainly in our world is they're not maybe ready to buy straight away. Yeah. So how do you keep in touch then? How often you talked to before about, you know, newsletters and bulletins and blogs, all really key stuff, but you need to map them out and understand whereabouts in that journey they're going to go. Yeah.
Now, right, I'm going to ask you if there's one key element from this, what you'd like our listeners, our audience to take away from today's talk, what would that be?
I would say the biggest thing for me, what we've learned, is actually a fresh pair of eyes makes such a difference. That's the key thing. Whether it's someone else in your organization, someone who you work with, someone who can just look at things and give you an objectional view. That's a really key thing. Have an objectional view and then take some time to physically map it out. Whether that's, you know, a bit of paper and a pencil and just draw it. This happens. Think of it stage by stage by stage. And think about how would you want to be treated as a customer. You know, that's what I think it is. You know, treat everyone like that. And then I think you've got a good chance of getting it right. And then continue to review it. So there's probably more than one in there, actually.
Yeah, that's fine. That's everything. So I'd like to, first of all, thank Mike for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
We have rattled through that talk quicker than before I realised how much time has flown by. we'll have that downloadable link as a reminder to everyone who's listening and watching on YouTube on the YouTube description for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. If you are listening, we hope you found this talk very, very engaging. And don't forget to reach out to us if you have any questions or any elements or topics you want us to discuss using the at handle Bobble Digital or hashtags Mr. Bobble, hashtag Ask Bobble or hashtag Bobble Pod. And we'll catch you on our next episode. Bye.
Cheers.